Hi, welcome to the Leighton Inclusion Interview Show, where we talk about the difference between kindness and cruelty with an emphasis on kindness. And today is a special day because we're talking with Lisa Torem, a Chicago-based public speaker, author, music reporter, songwriter, and walker. I saw that in your resume, and we'll be talking about inclusion, especially ways that artists, that those are writers, artists can become more empathic. Hi, Lisa, how are you?
I'm fine, and I've been very excited about being on your show, so thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for reaching out about that. You have an incredible resume, 5 books and one more on the way. It's going to be on the Beach Boys coming soon. I met Lisa through her work as a freelance writer for PopMatters and PennyBlack music. I did not realize how similar our histories are. I also started early on writing plays and writing
Uh,
music. So, what was the first play? And it had something to do with a dog. You're an
yes,
animal person.
yeah, I wrote a play, a one-act play called Dog Sharing, and it won a part in a festival in New York a bunch of years ago. The theme was basically about this kind of yuppie guy who's a businessman, and he wants to impress this wealthy client who has a schnauzer, and so he doesn't want to own a schnauzer. He rents a schnauzer from sort of this weirdo guy. Uh, to increase his business with this woman who's suffering because her husband Ben died and so forth. So it's really all about commitment or lack of commitment thereof. And it's a comedy, and it was very exciting to go to New York and see how they cast it because they cast it differently than I would have, and I thought they did a great job.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The casting is always an interesting thing when you go see your play being performed. I always thought theater and live concerts were related because there's similar prep and repeated performances. And the one artist which you and I both love and have done work with me more is with Jethro Tull, which is
Oh,
Shakespeare,
exactly.
music on
Yeah,
Shakespeare.
great
So,
description. I agree with you.
yeah. Oh, my pleasure. And Lisa and I've worked together. She's interviewed Ian Anderson and a couple of my artists, so that's a thrill always to see that.
Can I tell you a little secret?
Yeah.
Little secret. Well, to everybody, and we'll see if you run it. But tell you a little secret about my first interview with Ian Anderson.
Okay.
I did my homework as always and saw tons of videos and articles, and I've always been very impressed with his knowledge. He knows about so many things, and he was even talking about Paul Butterfield Blues Band. I mean, his roots go so deep, Celtic and Indian and so forth, and Raga. But I interviewed him, and for the first time in my life, I had a panic attack.
Oh no.
And my knees were shaking. The only other time this had happened is when I ended up on an expressway at rush hour with not enough gas in the tank and it was getting dark. And I had this physical reaction. And I said to Goddess, God, whoever's up there, I said, just keep my voice okay. Just keep my voice sane because I was all prepared with everything else. And I got through the interview timely, everything else. It worked out fine. And I contacted my editor, John Clarkson at Penny Black, and I told him, and he said, it'll never happen again. And he encouraged me to do follow-up interviews with the artists that I really liked, which I ended up doing with many, many artists. And it
Yeah,
never
yeah.
happened again. But it,
No, and it wouldn't. I look early on in my career, I was hanging out at Rick Derringer's studio, and he was my favorite rock star. And my heart's still breaking about losing him. I can't believe it.
yes.
But I remember being really nervous and tense, and I'm sure he could tell. And they, he seemed to make me feel calmer. His wife, especially Liz, then.
Hmm.
So I know what you're talking about and how easy it is to get stressed. And oh my God. And they have hard days too.
Oh,
They
I'm
won't
sure.
admit it. So,
Yeah, and I think part of what I try to do is hope people feel comfortable and comfortable talking to me about whatever we're going to talk about, and hoping we hit some common ground on things that they feel really comfortable talking about, whether it's a news item or something in the past. it's always a challenge, and and I'm a curious girl, so it works out very well for me.
Yep, yep, yep. So we're taping this, and did you meet? We're taping this on Monday, July 7th, which is Ringo Starr's birthday.
Yes,
Yeah, and we both decided, see, we both decided to connect with each other with peace and love and Ringo.
absolutely.
We had to do that as opposed to a standard background, my logo. So I just had to. And that's a great photo of
Isn't
Ringo.
it? Isn't it? Yeah, he's
Yeah.
photogenic, I believe.
Well, you had an amazing event on Ringo Starr's birthday in 2008 at the Hard Rock Cafe.
Yes,
What
yes.
was that?
I was invited to a press conference, and I was able to ask Ringo one or two questions. And how do you decide what to ask Ringo Starr, right? Someone who's been interviewed from the time they was a teenager. So I believe I asked him about his artwork because generally, you
Oh,
probably know that he does this incredible artwork and he does things on his drum kits and he donates his artwork to charities. And so, yeah, I got to look at his beautiful blue eyes and ask him a few questions. And as you can imagine, he was very, very busy that day. It was a very, very short encounter, but very
mm-hmm.
enjoyable experience.
You got to be in the same room with
I
rock and
did.
roll. Yeah.
I did.
And that's true rock and roll royalty. And
True.
yeah, he was my favorite Beatle for a long time when the Beatles first came out. I have to confess that. Was he ever your favorite Beatle?
Oh yeah, and that scene in Hard Day's Night, I think a lot of people know the scene where he's a vagabond, he's trying to hide from his fans, and he goes into a thrift shop and gets this old overcoat, and he's walking around by some stream with this little boy who comes up. He doesn't know who Ringo is, and he's just chattering away. And Ringo says, "Well, I'm going parading," and it's just a fantastic scene where you see what a wonderful actor he is,
Oh
and
yeah. Oh
just
well,
beautiful to
yeah.
see all his skill sets.
My favorite was Yellow Submarine, and which Peter Max did the art for, and he picked up this black thing and put it in his pocket. I have a hole in my pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't play drums, but you play a bunch of other instruments and you write songs, and you got some videos on YouTube with their bands performing your music. That's amazing.
That's been a lot of fun. I started guitar when I was young, and then my dad was a piano player in a trio, kind of a jazz and Latin kind of trio. So piano was always around, and my mom played some piano. And then I started songwriting here and there. For that project, I did a dance song that was re-envisioned it's from the eight. I wrote it in the 80s, and then I had my daughter Maddie reenact it. That was Look Both Ways Before You Cross My Heart. And then, um,
Oh, nice title.
thank you. And then Deja Vu was a jazz tune, kind of a smoky jazz, kind of Peggy Lee inspired tune about running into an old flame and flirting at the bar and this kind of stuff. So a jazz band picked it up and they did their own version of it with their big band singer. So that was a lot of fun.
How did you get these songs to all those people?
Well, I do play in a community band. I'm one of the
Aha.
keyboardists, and so we do big band music. And one of the horn players said, "Well, how about, would you mind if I do that tune for our band?" So that's how that started. And the disco tune, it was my first music video. It was Maddie's first music video, and our friend who did it is a stand-up comic and doing a video business. So it was all our first time, and it was all shot in Chicago. So it was a lot of fun, and we developed it along the way. It was interesting just to work on. I didn't know how to do storyboards exactly, but I had stories, and as we did it, things changed because
Hmm.
it was not realistic. At first, I said, "Ooh, let's have Maddie going up and down the subway stairs. Let's have Maddie da 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 elevator." And he said, "Well, you do know that every location means another day of shooting and another more expense." And I said, "Oh, okay." So I learned to taper things down. We found
Yeah.
this piano at a beach, this old piano that somebody just left there. And we just shot some of it there. And it was a lot of fun, great learning experience.
Yeah, it is. And I like that you're sharing what you learned along the way. Every location is more money.
Hmm.
That's really solid. And you seem to collaborate a lot. You're doing public speaking with people
Hmm.
and you're writing with people. I'm and you freelance a lot and you just keep busy. I how do you manage your time or is each day different and that's what you like?
Well, I do love to collaborate, especially with, I've been very blessed to have some wonderful collaborators. And yeah, I mean, there's certain things like I write for Penny Black as a staff writer, so I always do that. I always do my Raging Pages column, which is my rock lit column. And then I like to do new things. When I'm working with John Chanel, he is Tori Amos's string arranger, and he's worked with everybody, the Bangles and Rick Springfield, and you name it, to so many Grammy nominated acts. And we started in 2023 in the fall, and we went to a British Louder Than Words festival where they combined writers and musicians. And we did our first talk there on his career, and I was part of a music journalism panel and an author panel. And since then, the last 2 years, we're just exploring a lot of topics. We just did our first big talk on the Beach Boys at the Mensa conference, their annual conference. And we've gone to Rotary clubs. We did something called Resilient Women in Rock, which is featuring women
Yeah.
that we've worked with, either I've interviewed or he's worked with as a client. And we talk about their obstacles, their setbacks, how they've just gotten back on the horse so many times, and how much we admire
Mm.
their work. And we're also, there's some other things in the works that we're planning on doing um, this coming year. Oh, and actually, we're going to Holland because Phil had a client named Willie DeVille, and he produced four
Hmm.
albums. And Willie still has a lot of fans in Europe, so we're going to do a Q&A about Willie DeVille in Holland in August. So we like
Wow.
kind of the synchronicity. Things come up, and sometimes we plan them, and sometimes they come up, and we like the wackiness.
We have parallels because last week I was tracking down some songs for a friend or a client that's working on a movie, and I reached out. There was a Austin blues singer that died, and I was connected to his publisher who
Hmm.
was in Mink DeVille. And so
Really?
this is less than a week ago. And I'm on the phone with
Wow.
the guy. So and we just friended each other on the social media. So
That's amazing.
yeah,
That's
but
amazing.
yeah. So Holland that's amazing. Have you gone out of the country much? Because Penny Black music, who you write for, is out of the UK.
Yes, it's Sean Clarkson lives in Scotland, and our webmaster lives in London. And
Hmm.
a few times I've gone there to hang out with the writers at the local pub, or sometimes they'll have concerts. They'll have three or four bands on a band night, and they invite the writers. So I've done that a few times. I've got to know quite a few of the writers, and they're awesome. They're very supportive of John Clarkson, and he's very supportive of them, and it's a wonderful network.
Yeah, I like that. It's interesting when you talk about resilience and you make that a theme for your public speeches and you're helping people because like when I was looking at some of the rock stars that I ended up being friends with early on, I took qualities of their creativeness or how hardworking they were, some of their philosophies, and I applied that to my life. And
Hmm.
when you talk about what Suzanne Vega or Tori Amos have gone through, and I know Suzanne from early on in the
Hmm.
folk scene in New York City, they're fighters, they're feisty
Yeah.
women.
Yes. They're feisty women, and they're very conscientious, and they're very committed to their fans and go way out. I just went to a book signing because Tori just wrote a children's book called Tori and the Muses, which really has much wider application for adults. It's on the New York Times bestseller list. And I went to see her in Naperville And she stayed until midnight. There were about 500 people, and she wanted every fan to have an opportunity to get a picture snapped and say
Wow.
hey. And yeah, and that's the kind of incredible commitment. And I know Suzanne and Tori are so involved in very helpful support networks for people who've gone through trauma. And yeah, and I like people to know that. First of all, I like them to know that in case they need it or someone else needs it. And also just to spread the word about celebrities that are doing great things. And
Yeah, absolutely. What was Tori's? Tori was signed to a label that wanted her to be a hairband artist or something like that.
yes, Why Can't Tori Read was the album before Little Earthquakes. And she ended up creating this image that she was talked into, I would say. It was kind of she was raised as a bustier and she was not doing the songs that she wanted to do. She really didn't even have her own band. So she fought very hard to be an independent artist. It was a lot of work. And the other thing was she was okay about going back to playing piano bars if it didn't work out. And she really stuck to what she felt she needed to do artistically.
That's the right thing because honestly, when you're working on your art, I probably could have worked at a major label as something in promotions or could have freelanced for publication X, Y, and Z or stayed at Hit Parader until it died. I could have done all that stuff, but I wanted to work with artists that I felt right about working with. I really loved, for me, I love the hair band genre. I wasn't a big grunge fan back then. I
Mhm.
didn't understand grunge's greatness. Although I like Nirvana and I love Pearl Jam, but to me they were like Marshall Tucker. They were just such a groove and they jammed when I heard them. And that's who I thought of. They were without the flute, of course. And later I learned that Eddie Vedder loved Tull. So there you
Oh
go.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
totally. So, but I really love working with artists and writing at home as well as doing publicity with the right artist for a longer amount of time.
Hmm.
It's a just a way to groove and grow and know that I'm doing great work and helping to promote people that want to make the world a better place.
Yeah, yeah, I'm on the same page with you. One of the things I try to come across with in my books is how important the team is for every act. And that includes, of
Yeah,
course, publicists and tour managers and guitar techs and all these incredible people that support the act. And I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people that I just talked to Bobby Figueroa, who was a drummer and singer and multi-instrumentalist with the Beach Boys for many years. And I talked to a lot of other people in my other books that were significant. And it's just really important to make that case because sometimes people that, and it's not like I know all that much about the business, but it is so important to appreciate everyone who's part of that gigantic project. All the
absolutely.
time it takes, all the time it takes for someone like you to go back and forth and set up an interview and deal with emails and communication and all these things that require a great deal of time and dedication. Every person that continues to do that is a big, big piece of it.
It's building. Who helped Suzanne Vega through her
Well,
career? What a fascinating woman.
yeah, she started out fairly young, and this guy Steve Adabo with his business partner, they were looking to manage an act, and they saw her, and they were very impressed with her confidence and her repertoire, and so they produced her first album, and she was really a go-getter. I mean, she went to the Village, and there were clubs that turned her down, and she kept going back
Unbelievable.
until she found like Gertie's. This club Gertie's was a club that
Gertie's Folk City.
yeah, encouraged original music. And so she just kept pounding the pavement and she would put up the posters herself, way before, of course, social media,
Of
whatever it
course.
took, the mailing lists and the posters on the trees and the whole business. And she was very diverse in each album. I think that the other thing that I've noticed about the artists I've written books about, they're always changing. I mean, every album, her albums would be about tarot cards or about Hollywood starlets that she admired. With Tori, Tori has done Native Invader, for example, because she is part of First Nations, and so she's done a lot of education in terms of that whole experience.
Hmm.
And Billy Joel has been very helpful. I know when 911, 9/11 happened, he was doing
Yeah.
benefits for firefighters. He was so involved in the whole New York scene and coming back to New York and what with the Bay fishermen when there were issues with them losing their livelihood, he was there in demonstrations and he did a documentary. So these are people that have just been very involved on the front lines. And one of the people I've interviewed, by the way, just speaking about that, was Peter Yarrow from Peter, Paul and Mary.
Oh, rest in
And
peace.
oh yeah, wonderful, wonderful person. Of course, he came from that time when there was so much protest and activism and so forth. But he wrote The Great Mandala, which is this incredible song about a prisoner on a hunger strike, and such moving material. And it's such a treat to talk to the artist about what motivated them to write that song, to finish the song, and the reactions they've gotten, which very often are, well, Genesean, I've interviewed her a number of times, and she went through a lot with her songs at a very young age. She wrote
Oh,
Society's Child, right? And about an
right. That's
interracial
about,
couple and getting,
yep.
yeah, and she got hate mail and radio stations were getting threats. And she was a young girl when all this happened. And, uh, how do you handle that? That's a lot of
It is.
pressure. But they've done it. They've bounced back and they reinvent
I mean, all
themselves.
people like Peter Yarrow and Janissie, etc., all they wanted to do was say, hey, and Ringo, hey, people, love each
Yes.
other.
Yeah.
Learn to love, learn to understand what people are about. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, that does, how does that come into play when you're a public speaker? Teaching people, because you're teaching about show business and you certainly are showing how the team of the artists works. How does it, can it improve society the way a knock on wood, a local politician could improve society, or a good president, let's say, you know?
Well, I imagine on a local level, it's been fascinating to see questions people come up with. Sometimes they're very niche questions about something about, for example, John Chanel being an arranger. They want to know specifically how he did an arrangement, and that's always fascinating. But other times, they want to know more about the activism. They want to know more about what was happening during that time in history, or they want a dialogue about that, or there may be people that heard a name, oh, they've heard that name or they've heard that song. They have no idea what anything more about the album. I did a podcast with a radio personality about a year ago, and he said, I had no idea Billy Joel did all that kind of stuff. I loved his music. So people usually know a piece of something, and depending on
Right.
their age, they might have heard of an artist, but they don't know they were associated with that song. So it's kind of a bringing together of minds. And like when we went to the Mensa thing, they were just question, 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 question. We were just actually absolutely, it was amazing because you don't
Yeah.
know what people are going to ask you. You really don't, and it's been a tremendous learning experience talking about the process of writing or talking about, like you were saying, well, how do you coordinate these talks? And that's something we're learning each time. We're trying to for this idea was kind of a marriage of journalism and musicianship and
Mm-hmm.
arranging and John Chanel is such a talented man. He's been doing this work for 50 years or so, and he has so much to share, but this is one way to do it. This is one way we stay after, we talk as long as people want for the most part, grab a coffee and see what's in people's minds. Sometimes they have kids that want to go into the business and they say, well, what was your experience? What would you say to the kids? And
Mm-hmm.
uh, you get everything,
What would
really.
you say? What would you say to the kids
What,
that want to
that's a
go into the
great question.
business?
Well, don't be starving and desperate. Figure out
Right?
something that's adjacent. But don't be desperate. It's not going to help you at all. But get something that is adjacent so that you can build up your contacts and and also honor everybody that you encounter. Honor
Yes.
everyone you encounter and understand that whatever they do involves work and it's so important. I remember I met some young woman at a concert. She says, "Oh, that's cool. You get to talk to these rock stars." And I said, "Yeah, but you have to do your homework." It's not just like, "Hey, let's talk to a rock star." I mean, you have to do your homework. And just be aware that, like I was saying, every email, every message, somebody said to me, "Oh, I know you're interviewing this artist. Can you tell them that I wrote this song?" And I said, "No." I said, "That is not the
You're
relationship.
telling the
I have a
truth.
yeah, I have and they didn't really understand it. So I just explained, these are sacred relationships. They are very discreet relationships. I never give out anybody's information. If you want to find out where to contact that artist, do that, but I would not put somebody in that position. So,
Right.
these are the things that people know in the beginning. But yeah, I mean, I would say to a young person, first of all, really love it, really love the process of learning about people. Are you a curious person?
Mm.
You really must because people will know. And you need to sustain yourself. And you need to be aware of what people are going through. Sometimes I've interviewed an artist who's in a queue. He's got 5 interviews before me and ahead of me, or I've interviewed Dweezil Zappa going through customs. I mean, or Maria Muldaur, her foot hurt. She was
Oh,
going
wow.
to the doctor and she was trying to get to, I mean, a lot of times they're going to give you their time and it's a very precious amount of time and you have to honor that. And that might mean that you don't ask all the questions you're going to ask, or that might mean that you shift because somebody has another news item you didn't know about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I would also say that deadlines are extremely important. Don't be lollygagging around. I mean, deadlines are sacred and respect that somebody has deadlines. Not maybe it's not just you, but many people are involved in the team and it's all important.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, as a publicist, I'll get emails. Why isn't so and so interested in doing an interview with me? I interviewed his guitarist and I interviewed his friends. Why can't I get an interview with him? And I said, look, I apologize. Your outlet is just too small,
Mm-hmm.
or it's not regular. It hasn't been around long enough.
Mm-hmm.
Or try reaching out and getting in the loop with the guy that's working the artist publicity
Mm-hmm.
and see who else they're working with that would have the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because when an artist like Ian Anderson is touring all over the world, he and somebody who has a nice podcast, but he probably doesn't do his homework as much as a regular journalist would. Well, Ian's not going to make time for that person,
Right.
you know.
And and
He's got,
also there are artists such as Ian or Donovan that will say to the writer, here's the time I have, and a writer
yeah,
needs to regard that highly. You
yeah,
know,
totally.
that's the somebody says I've got 15 minutes, 15 minutes,
Yeah.
right?
Uh,
And if you skip it, then be prepared that they're gonna yank you, and that's the way it is. And don't be
yeah, yeah. And I mean, Ian used to do 60-minute interviews with people, and bit by bit, it just said, look, he wants to respect his voice. He's on the road so many days a year. He has to do Europe and India or South Africa or some Australia,
hmm
South America. He's not going to do 20-minute interviews or 30-minute interviews.
hmm
I've had to turn down some wonderful podcasts. Um, I'm going to say it. There's a rock and roll high school podcast that a friend of mine that's so well connected with the entire music industry. He's won millions of Grammys, or his artists have won, and he would not do that podcast because he only wanted to talk 30 minutes, and the technology that the interviewer was using was not technology that he had at his home because
hmm
of the British technology for internet. is not as good as it is here in the New York market.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. So it's a fascinating realization. I have a question about being in front of the Mensa audiences because
Sure.
I have a stereotype. Mensa is known as being a genius.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of have a stereotype about people that are geniuses or say they're geniuses, and that is that they look down on other people. How off base am I?
I went into it not knowing, and I still don't know that much about it, but from talking to people and hearing a short interview on NPR, what I think that they do talk about, what their belief is more that everybody has a particular type of genius or intelligence. And it's
Huh.
not just, in fact, I heard someone interviewed for Mensa on NPR. She says, well, I'm not very good at math. And people think because I'm Mensa, I'm a math genius, and I'm not. But I do have certain intelligence in other areas, and the people that I meet, we share that. And and I felt that the people were very grounded. I wasn't sure what to expect either, to be honest. And I'm not a Mensa, and I probably
Right.
won't be, but I think that they were people that are very curious people. I think that they just judging from there were like one, two, three, four questions every time we made a point.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, so I think there are people that are very aware. The people I talk to usually, like us, have three or four projects going, and they thrive
Yes.
on that. They high energy, and they like ABC. They like to know something gets completed, and they're curious, and they want to know. It's interesting because the Beach Boys. I'm not an expert on the Beach Boys, but I think it brought a lot of people back to a lot of their memories, and they each had stories about being in a band or liking a song or about a particular Beach Boy and how we felt about it or a particular type of music or album. And I think they like that idea of just being in one room and analyzing and being open and yeah, so I know what you're saying. I kind of thought I was a little intimidated. I thought, well, I'm not one of these, right? Uh,
Right, right.
but they were very grounded people. I think that there was just this real spark of curiosity in the room.
Yeah, yeah.
And you
Th-
kind of expected that. You go to another room and there's be that same spark of curiosity.
which you have naturally because when you do interviews, you're asking interesting questions. When you do answer and question, and they're not written interviews, they're hey, 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 right? You're bouncing off of someone.
Bouncing off. When I first started, I remember holding my paper like it was somebody was going to grab it from me and run across and steal it. I was so, I mean, when I was very new, I was like, oh, I have to ask this, I have to ask this. As I went along, I got more free in terms of bouncing off someone's reaction.
Hmm.
And, but I am basically curious, and I do love talking about the creative process. So that's basically how I arrange my interviews.
Cool.
I wanted, well, for example, I've talked to Rod Argent and Colin Blunstone a number of times, and I was able
The
to
zombies.
I love them. And I was able to ask about She's Not There. I'm able to ask about my favorite songs and say what was going on,
Yeah.
what was going on in the room and the breath in the microphone and who was playing the
Oh,
tambourine. And
yeah.
I love that stuff. I just and you have to, and that's what I would say to you have to love that stuff. You have to,
What is the story about the breath and the microphone in the room for She's Not There by the Zombies?
yeah, well, I think they were experimenting, with sonics and that kind of thing. Uh and Rod Argent is such a brilliant improviser and you've probably seen them live when he takes off
Yeah,
on his
yeah.
stuff. Um so I think they discovered that by accident and kept it in. Um and yeah, it's just so fascinating to talk to someone who was there, especially acts that started very young. I talked to Jim McCarty. This was my second interview with him recently from the Yardbirds.
The
And and
Yardbirds.
you of course know he's doing a show where he's doing storytelling.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and
Less
people are
drumming.
riveted. People are riveted, but well, I mean, I'm a big British invasion freak. I love anything with the British invasion. So I love hearing those stories. He told this story about one of the musicians' fathers. They asked him to be the driver, And he's like, I don't know, I was grumbling about it. And the next thing you know, he says that the father was dressing up in his tailored suits because now he was really proud of being the driver, and all these changes that were happening along the way with the bands. And I just love those stories. You know, first they're pushing the van because they don't can't afford gas, and they're pushing it down the street, and then now they're making sure they're comfortable, and they've really earned every second of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But they're bringing a lot of people to the shows, especially in 300 size venue. You know, the 1,000 size venues are harder,
Yeah.
but the 350 size venues, 400, 500 even, that's where they're playing nowadays, and
Mhm.
it works. So I worked with them doing social media, so I made sure that the Yardbirds Forever page on Yardbirds International on Facebook had your article
Oh,
there.
thank
So yeah, it
you.
was a pleasure. So
Uh,
we
and
have a different publicist. So yeah,
yeah, well, also, I mean, I find it exciting, and I to talk to those people that to have a first source interview is so exciting, and to know
yeah,
what's going on when that particular era started, and how they were struggling, or how they were collaborating, and who they were collaborating with, and how the songs evolved is endlessly fascinating to me. And
absolutely,
technology, how much has changed. And some of these guys were splicing tape with the razor blade and the tape, and now they're doing digital, and they've survived all
absolutely.
that, and they've thrived on it. And, you know, yeah, and it's very impressive.
Now you're based in Chicago,
I am. Yes.
and you co-wrote a book
Yes.
with Jim Peterick.
Yes.
And I know that name. We all know that name from
Mhm.
somewhere. He wrote one of the best songs from the TV show Supernatural, Eye of the Tiger.
Mhm.
Tell me about co-writing a book with Jim Peterick.
Well, he was one of my interviews for Penny Black, and we started talking, and he invited me to the studio, first of all, for the interview. You know, some of my interviews are phoners, and a few of them are emails, and some are in person. But he invited me to his studio for that particular interview, and I hung out, and we went out for lunch with some of his friends. And then he mentioned that he was looking for someone possibly to work on a memoir project, and asked me if I was interested. And
Sweet.
so that's how it started. We did about 50 interviews. And
Wow.
it was my first project doing something like that. So I just wanted to get as much of the meat and potatoes as I could. And he grew up in a Czech neighborhood in a suburb called Berwyn, a suburb of Chicago. And we talked about his influences, and his father wanted him to be a doctor. And uh, he first had the success with I mean vehicle. That was his first
The
hit when
Ides
he
of
was
March. That was in
Ides of
the
March. Yes.
60s.
Yeah. And so, and then what happened with this particular situation is Queen, that song, Another One Bites the Dust. I believe the
Right.
producer was looking to use that for the Rocky 3 movie, and they weren't able to get it. And then they heard this song, and then they had an idea for having Frankie Sullivan and Jim Peterick write a song for that movie. So it was a very good, partnership musically at the time, because they came up with that dampening of the strings kind of thing, which was supposed to indicate boxing. So, of course, that became very successful. So yeah, and really the way I approached it was to not know everything, but to just get as much material as I could from as many perspectives as I could, so that I could chop it down, narrow it down, talk to him about what's really important. Um, so it's a really interesting project to work with someone, and it's very personal. I mean, I've never done it. I've never, you have to be sort of a brave person to ask somebody to do that project with you, because you don't know how you're going to
Yeah.
feel doing all these things in your life. And I've personally never done that, but I can see that that would be a big deal emotionally.
Did I pronounce his name right? I'm Peterick.
Yes, Peter.
Oh, goody,
Yeah.
goody. I wanted to make sure. That was your first book?
Yes.
That's amazing. So that probably got you addicted to doing more book writing, or were you hesitant? How did you deal with it?
Uh, well, my next project was with Ava Cherry, who was a singer with David Bowie, and she influenced a lot of his. She was in the Young Americans album. So I met her actually. There was a Bowie is exhibit in Chicago, and
Mhm.
it was the only other one I believe at the time was in London at the what is that museum? Very famous British Albert. What is it? The
Okay.
Albert V&A something museum is escaping me right now.
We'll have to
Victorian
research it.
Albert with Victorian Albert Museum. And so it was there, this big Bowie exhibit with all the costumes and memorabilia. And our and we have a museum called the Museum of Contemporary Art. And the curator there picked up the phone and called that museum and said, "Well, how about if we do it in Chicago?" And they said, "Okay." And so it was really rare to have that exhibit in Chicago. So when I was there, I was asked to do a story on it. And then I see this very fashionable young woman, and it turned out to be Ava Cherry, and she sat next to me, and she also said, I'm thinking about doing a book. This is how it starts. And so we ended up working on that together. And that was really the research was really fun too, because I learned a lot about things that had happened in Chicago, which I didn't know about. Like there was this Regal Theater that was very popular in the Black communities, and a lot of people started there, like Michael Jackson. I didn't know a lot of these things had happened, and there was something called policy that a lot of people in the neighborhoods played. This ended up becoming the format for the Illinois lottery. So a lot of interesting cultural things came up, and it's a great opportunity. Well, anytime I can study the history of pop music in whatever way is exciting
Absolutely.
for me. So that was another opportunity to do that. And then my solo books, uh, I found a British publisher, and it just turned out that uh, somebody had written a book about Tori, but it didn't work out for whatever reason. And he said, "Yeah." So she was one of my favorite artists, and so that's what happened with that. And I was a solo writer, and then I went on to Billy Joel and Suzanne Vega and coming up with the Beach Boys.
It developing empathy for an artist. We've been speaking about this off and on through this interview, where you do your homework, where you treat folks with respect, where you do 50 interviews with somebody that you're co-writing a book with, developing an awareness. And how would that relate to being empathic to other people? What are things that regular people could learn from music writers that do dig deep when they do interviews that could improve their relationships with other people?
Well, I think that you really have to understand that when someone's opening up to you, to be very sensitive, to be an active listener, and to always, it's not about you. I mean, when you're interviewing someone, it's not about you. You need to stay away from that the egotistic aspect, and give people space to talk, and
Hmm.
realize that some topics can be very sensitive. Also, give them a way out. If you end up on a topic, there's been a few times I would talk to an artist who had a hard time and started talking about it, or maybe talked about someone that they had a quarrel with, and I'll give them an opportunity to step back, and I'll say, this is going to be in print or however it's going to be, and
Good for you.
it's going to be out there. So, let me know. Do you want to? It's up to you, obviously. Um, and give them that out, because a live interview, people are under pressure. Sometimes you say things and you might not say them in the same way as given a chance. So I think it's important not to put anyone in a corner. And also really regard highly, like I said, the work it's taken for that artist to get to where they are. My goodness,
Yeah.
and I've learned on tour how hard people work. it's the sound check and get this. I think when I was first doing, I had this fantasy they'd be running around sightseeing and going shopping. And I learned real quickly that they're lucky if they get out of the hotel room.
Oh yeah. Oh
Right?
yeah. I mean, I
They're
get notes.
packed.
We'd like to take Ian for a boat ride, or we'd like to take him out to lunch at, our favorite Indian food place or something like that.
Hmm.
Like, sorry. And by the way, we can't invite you to catering pre-show. So sorry. That type of thing.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. So there's things that I've learned along the way, and you really have to treat them the way you would treat a great friend, really, with that same regard and for their time, for their history, and realize that you are a guest. This is a line in one of my things. You are a guest in my life, or I'm a guest in your life. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's an interesting relationship. The great movie Almost Famous had some great lines in there about journalists and rock stars and fantasy and so forth. Um, and there is an element of, yeah, there's an element of wanting to hang out, right? But it's usually not going to happen. But it's funny, because there's been a few artists that I've interviewed 4 or 5 times, and I think one of the times I talked to Colin Blunstone, and he was doing a series of interviews that day, but all of a sudden he said my name and he said, I recognize your voice. And so that
Ah,
was meaningful, because sometimes you do a one-shot interview or even a few, and you can't expect the artist to even remember who you are or remember
no.
they're just they're doing what they need to do. And people like him are incredible and always so polite and so forth. But it's kind of a kick, I remember talking to Alan Parsons, and we were talking about folk music, and he stopped. He said, "Oh, are you a folk artist, Lisa?" And but it was so cute because he kind of stopped our line of questioning and talked to me because I was me, and we got onto another topic. But sometimes things break through. Sometimes it's you're like, oh, we kind of got to this other level, and it's kind of fun.
I can imagine. I can hear him asking you that, Alan Parsons. That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. Or sometimes people just reveal things that one of the artists revealed that he had like a out of about this near-death experience, and I had something
Mm-hmm.
similar. So it was actually spellbinding, bounding to be there at that moment and to share that experience with somebody, but especially somebody whose work I've admired all these years.
Absolutely, totally. Uh, I've been watching. I'm just noticing that my Zoom is doing things backwards, but this is fun.
It is
So
fun.
I'm watching TV. I love to watch lately. I've been watching a lot of women's and
Uh-huh.
female empowerment shows.
Hmm.
In addition to, I've been watching episodes of Blossom through the years, which is watching a young lady grow up. And I think maybe Blossom might have become Olivia Pope, the woman in the middle,
Uh-huh.
for the show Scandal, which is about someone that is also very smart and very individualistic,
Hmm.
who is uncovering scandals
Mm.
and also involved in scandals. When is a person the news, and when is a person who's trying not to be the news? How 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 can they not make it about them? How can they not make the dark secrets about them, but make it about helping others get more known?
And you're
Or
talking about the writers of the show, or
just I'm trying to relate a question from the show to you.
Mhm. So how do you reveal a news item and kind of think of it as a news item without being personally involved? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, without making it about you,
Ah,
because we do that as writers. I think I just did this through the interview where I was talking about where you were talking about something that happened, and I said, "Oh yeah, I can relate to that," uh,
oh,
which is hard.
are you saying kind of where to taper it, or like
Yeah,
where to,
when do you know
ah,
when do you know when to make it about them and less about you when you do the interviews?
yeah. Yeah, I mean that's definitely a conscious choice. I think the little voice in my head will jump up and down and go, I know what that's like, but in terms of the actual interview and what my reader is going to read, I think of myself as sort of the, it's a little bleak, but sort of the empty hanger in the closet, and my client or the person I'm talking to is the wardrobe and the beautiful uh, Stella McCartney gown or whatever. I mean, it is about them. And if I relate to it, I probably won't go into that very much other than to very briefly, you know, say that that's something that I understand. But I would cut it off at that point.
Sure.
And I've seen interviews with a few very young journalists that I've seen them like cry in front of their clients and get upset and expect the person they interviewed to comfort them.
Yeah,
Like,
please
what is
do.
going on with that? Right? What's going on with that? Um, it's a little weird.
Well, I guess I have seen that happen. I watch podcasts on YouTube. A lot of the interviewers that deal with deep, dark uh, life types like narcissism, Lisa Ballou, who does interviews. And actually, I sort of like when she starts relating her life experiences with going through bullies in her life to
Mm.
some of the coaches. I actually do like that. But
Hmm.
there probably are instances where it's like, hey, lady, shut up, or something like that. So,
Yeah, I would say that another format, like if you're doing your own thing, do it then. But you're asking about how to increase empathy with these relationships. I've been doing interviews with great people like you the last 2 years, and that's been a fabulous learning experience
mm,
because otherwise it's theoretical, or because I always had the feeling when I interview someone, they might be, even if they're not nervous because they've done so many, they've got things going on, and I try to be sensitive to that or certain topics. But it's such a great experience to be on the other end of it and
yeah,
to, yeah, it's invaluable to know what
that
it's
makes
like to
sense.
be interviewed. And
Yeah,
sometimes
that's
people
true.
tell you ahead of time, and somebody's and then oh, well, maybe that's what Colin Blunstone feels like, or then you kind of get us, or how he did when he was 16 or whatever, because he's been doing it for so many years. But that's the best way to understand, is truthfully to put yourself in that situation.
Understood. I can relate. Absolutely. Y- What shows are you watching? Is there a show that TV show that you like or have liked through
Uh,
the years?
well, okay. Um, I love reruns of Gossip Girl.
Ah,
I,
ah,
I mean, New York's always been fascinating to me. So my daughter Maddie went to NYU, and she got me hooked on it. So
your daughter, the singer.
yeah, I don't have to apologize for that, do I? I
No,
love
no,
I love
no,
it. I love it.
no. It's a great cast.
Isn't it a great cast?
Amazing.
I can't say I'm up on the latest stuff. I did see a movie called All About Chuck recently that it doesn't seem like it's been promoted a lot, but uh, fascinating look at the human condition. I'm sort of more of a movie freak or book freak than a TV person. And when
Mhm.
the first year to get my 10,000 hours and trying to do that, I literally did not watch TV for a year, and I felt like I was a Martian because people would talk about this and that, and I'd be like, "What?" So I realized I should check in with it a little more. But yeah, I think I'm more of a movie and book person
I
than
hear
TV.
you.
Yeah.
We got to share info about an upcoming book, and here we are. We're looking at the Beach Boys, who are wonderful, and I sure we all miss Brian Wilson and Dennis
Yes.
Wilson too.
Yes.
And tell me about their impact on your writing.
Well, I really admired a lot of the choices they made in terms of developing. Brian would experiment. And I was talking to, John Chanel, my arranger friend, and we were just commiserating about that and saying Brian wasn't really in a position to be supported by a community of other composers. And I think that would have meant
Hmm.
so much for him because he was always creating and so original despite all his setbacks, an aggressive father and mental illness that he was combating. Um, but there were other classical composers that were doing things that were similar that got a lot of publicity or people knew about them. I don't think he had access to that kind of information. And so I think it would have been a feel-good thing for him because he was always experimenting. And even within the group, I mean, there were conflicts because Mike Love was more of a let's get back to the surfing stuff and let's get back to the lyrics that everybody understood. So there was internal uh, fissures between the band members in terms of where they were going
Mm-hmm.
commercially. Um, So yeah, but it's so fascinating to see where they went with their various albums. They did an album called Holland and with Blondie Chaplin and Ricky Fataar, and that totally changed the makeup of what they were doing. They had a bigger rock sound, and Tony Asher, who wrote lyricist, he was a former advertising executive. His lyrics in Pet Sounds were just astounding, and what a great collaboration. He did a couple albums. For example, in the song Caroline No, just that first line, "Where did your long hair go?" It takes you right into this nostalgia of uh, the girlfriend that young girl, and then he meets up with her later, and she's got her hair cut and she's conservative. But sometimes that one line brings you into this incredible mood.
I I I had wondered, I mean, I guess you mentioned that the father was hard on Brian,
Yeah.
and understand that he had some sort of mental illness. Would it have been made worse because Mike Love was had a reputation for being a little bit of a bully and a complainer?
I know there was friction between those guys in terms of the direction that they were going. And Mike Love ended up with the Beach Boys name, and he's still doing that. Um, yeah, I mean, Brian was very vulnerable, and I think his brothers they had to step up because, Carl and Dennis had to learn production and she keep the family business going. Um, there was a lot, and it was a much more challenging book because my other books are about singular acts with people that might use the same musicians for a period of time. But things were just ever changing in this band in terms of so many musicians, so many different lineups. Uh, I was lucky because for each of the books, I was able to interview a lot of insiders that were in the studio that saw Brian create these magical 3/4 part harmonies, that saw them play practical jokes on each other, that saw them get into issues about royalties and finance and how do you deal with big executives. And so I was a filmmaker that was very careful not to photograph them when he didn't feel it was appropriate, but got to know them on a very deep level. So I interviewed about 12 people for that book, including Paul von Mertens, who was Brian's um, musical director for many, many years. So each of those people gave me a different perspective. And by the way, you were very, very helpful with my Suzanne Vega book.
Oh, I was?
So I want to thank you
I
for that.
I have
Yes,
no idea.
yes, you were.
Well, I did see her early on at Speakeasy on McDougal Street, 107 McDougal.
Ah,
I saw Elliot there, actually, Elliot
oh,
Murphy, who you recently interviewed.
right, right.
So you're most welcome. I don't know what I did, but I sure love seeing Suzanne and all the folks down in Greenwich Village back in those days. That helped my career grow.
Yeah, such an exciting time. It's such a magical place. It's also interesting because doing the research, I'd walk around Columbia University and I saw, Tom's Diner, the restaurant, Tom's
Oh
Restaurant,
yeah, yeah,
all this
yeah.
stuff like in the church where, she talks about the church um, in the song. It's really fun to bring all that to life and to talk to people about those landmarks, especially people that have never been to a particular place. What's interesting about the Beach Boys phenomenon was, kids in South Dakota, kids that never saw a surfboard would have these fantasies about these carefree surf days. And we
California.
started, yeah, and we started this talk with a clip of Dick Dale, the Surf King, playing Miserlou. And for people don't know, that was like a Middle Eastern scale-based folk song. And young Carl Wilson, he modeled a lot of his guitar playing after Chuck Berry and the early surf instrumental kings, or that song Wipeout that the Surfaris did. Um, so I just love tracing the history of
Absolutely.
how these things developed. And and then also they got recycled because Mr. got recycled for, I believe it was Pulp Fiction. And I just saw the movie American Graffiti, and I hadn't realized how many of the Beach Boys songs they had used for
Oh,
that.
wow. I didn't either.
Yeah. Yes. So, they keep generations and generations love these bands, and it's so fascinating how they get attached and
Oh,
how
yeah.
joy one can get from. I mean, I love hearing Help Me Rhonda. I just get such a good mood hearing Help Me Rhonda.
Yeah, yeah.
And John Chanel was talking about the theory behind God only knows, the harmonic decisions that Brian came up with, because they had gone to the same community college, not at the same year, but they had a teacher in common. And so he said, well, I could imagine Brian going home and thinking, this might be a harmonic way to get from this part of the song to the other part of the song. But yeah, there's still so many things, of course, I don't know and I'll never know.
Sure.
Uh, and then you have to say, wow, these bands stayed together despite whatever was going on. Uh, they stayed together in whatever way they did.
Yeah, that's true.
For the Billy Joel book, I interviewed Liberty DeVito. He was Billy's drummer for 30 years, and he gave me some great insights. And so um, I've been very lucky, because talking about the people that were in the room where it happened, of course, is magical. So I've been very
Yeah.
lucky.
Well, I know that, speaking as somebody that's worked really hard to help my artists, and the commitment to where the music is the most important thing is a massive influence, and has helped me just plow through even bad relationships, or relationships where the person or people involved, where one or two of the people involved maybe have a few things to learn about human relationships. All
Hmm.
right, you still plow through, and you use the negativity maybe to help me improve my performance. I would use the negativity to help me improve my performance, that type of thing. But
Yeah.
critique.
Yeah. I mean, the
You,
artists that I've spoken to are really hardworking people, and they get up again and they do it again. And as the
yep,
song says, um, yeah. So that resilience is a very definitive thread that we all can learn from. And, I mean, they're not that different from the rest of us in terms of perhaps having that opportunity to reinvent ourselves when we need to.
absolutely. And your reinvention of your creative output, at least, because it's what you're doing. It is your work. Your Beach Boys book is called what, and when is it coming out?
It's called On Track, the Beach Boys, 1965 to 1979. It will be out probably in September in the UK first, and then more likely in November in the US. And
Okay.
we will continue to do talks. The first talk was so fun that if you know anybody, tell them to give me a call. And we'll come down to your local eatery or diner and coffee shop and yak away.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to post your author's page from Amazon so people can see all your books, as well as your
Thank
website, and
you.
they can learn more about you for sure. And I'll post links to the songs of yours that I find on YouTube. You had music in an indie movie called the Roadhouse.
Yes.
and in Candy Cigarettes,
Yes. A little
two
instrumental
movies.
that I wrote. Yeah.
Well done. It's hard to get syncs. Trust me.
Oh, I know. I know.
I
It
know.
is.
I know. Who you're resilient, huh? What's your
Well, I
secret
think
for resilience?
I think every day is just a curious day of seeing what's going to happen. It's funny because when I talk to my friend Jean Chanel, sometimes he'll bury himself in the studio for weeks at a time. And one day I asked him about it and I said, what's going on with that? And he said, I can't wait to see what happens. It's as if he was talking about another person, but it's him. And I feel the same way. Like it is a mystery and I don't know when I start a project I don't want to know
Mm-hmm. But you
exactly. I want
do.
room for flexibility. Yeah, and so I'm not someone who has a tight outline on anything I do. I like to be
None
flexible.
of us do.
Uh, but I like seeing that mystery unravel, and I like the opportunity to meet new people and see what they're doing uh, and see how we can work together. That's
Sure.
endlessly exciting.
So you're adapting to life situations while keeping certain goals in mind. Because sure, when you start a book, you want to finish it, or when you
Right.
start an article, you want to finish it, or a
Hmm.
painting. But at the same time, it's like, well, let's see, I've written plays, I've done public speaking, I still do that, I still write songs. People do my songs. My daughter's in college now and she's in New York City. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
And here comes another
Wow.
book. Yeah, I'm talking about you. I
Oh, you're talking about me?
don't have daughters, I have cats.
Oh, and I do too. And my best people are cat people. I have three
You're
cats.
an overachiever.
Yeah, and you'll have to come to Chicago and meet my Mickey, my tuxedo. Very
Oh,
handsome. He's just a little love bug. Yeah, he's my
okay. Let me just. So I just adopted two cats.
oh.
And I had a dream of adopting a black and white tuxedo
Yeah.
cat.
Yeah.
One of the cats is, and then the other cat has some sort of snowshoe Siamese markings. And they're
Oh.
brother and sister.
Ah,
So but she looks like my old, I had used to have a boy cat named Joey. Now I have
yeah.
another boy cat named Joey, different body types, but she's got his markings.
Oh. Oh my
So
goodness. They
but
sound
she's tuxedo. So
beautiful.
what's your tuxedo's name? I'm sorry.
Mickey, and then Pepper and Tarzan are they're the girls. They're his stepsisters. They don't always get along, but Mickey is gets along with everybody. He's one of the best politicians I know. So yeah, he's willing to get along with anybody. Very, very snuggly guy. And yeah, yeah, they should
Cool.
have a play date. Our cats should have a nice play date.
Absolutely. And there's a photo of Mickey on your website at
Is it
Lisa.
Mickey?
Well,
Oh,
it's a black and white cat.
oh, okay. No, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Mickey's
Well,
pretty much all black. So if it's a whitish, then it's probably one of the other ones.
oh, okay.
Okay, I
Well,
should get Mickey up there. He deserves a little stardom,
oh
I
yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah. I have to start taking pictures. I just got these two cats
Oh,
last week.
that's fantastic.
So they're new, they've acclimated. I named the big snowshoey like cat Arnold because he's very strong.
Oh,
And then I'm probably keeping Lala's name, which is what the mother named them initially.
yeah.
But I also call her Lola because whatever Lola wants,
I don't
Lola gets.
love baguettes, and they do.
And she's adopted the box right away. She's just done
Um,
it all. She's amazing.
that's very exciting.
Yeah,
Very exciting.
she's
I
owning
love
this
it.
place.
That is great. That's
Yeah.
great. Um, Yeah, I wanted to mention also one more project. So,
Mm,
John Chanel's doing an album, original music, and he's has about 9 seers, he's calls them women narrators, and I'm one
Oh,
of them. And it's called Mandala. And so I'm going with him when we do our talk in Holland. He's going to do a video of the thing that I'm doing yet, which is still not completed, but just to keep that in mind, when you see Mandala, that'll be promoted probably sometime next year. But it's very exciting because it's all based around women from all over the world and their narratives and his original music. So that'll be a lot of fun.
what does mandala mean? Because I'm thinking Mandela, the South African leader that we've learned a lot
Well,
from, but no.
oh no, it's not Mandala. It's Mandala, Mandala. I mean, it refers to, and I don't know if I'm getting this right, kind of a symbol of peace, and it's actual symbol. Now I know that some of the Buddhist monks, I saw a situation at a museum where they built something that they call the mandala, very painstakingly with a lot of sand. And then
Hmm.
after they completed it, they blew it apart because the whole idea was that things happen, that things change.
Sure.
So it's an album that involves a lot of reflection and narratives and people's stories, and it should be a really fun, illuminating project. So we're going to be working on that also when we do our talk about Willie DeVille in Holland.
Wonderful. Wonderful. LisaTorem.com, Torem. Lisa Torem. Lisa, thank you so much for this. This has been wonderful. And I appreciate how well you speak up for yourself and just keep at it. Thank you and enjoy Holland.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.